Hey friends, this is an audio-only video, so thank you for listening. I'm going to share some of my thoughts that I've been having recently, contemplations that have come up while spending a lot of time in isolation and resting because of an injury that I have. But it's been allowing me to spend more time in the other spheres, the mental spheres, the subtle realms, and also experimenting with resting in the center of my metaphysical, larger spinning torus field part of the body, which I've been really fascinated with for quite a while. And so the torus field, the torus shape, it's been rolling around in its own feedback loop as a thought form within my psyche for a few years, and I've been applying it to lots of different aspects of my life and reality just to consider. And I really think it's a smaller fractal of the larger system of what's going on. And so I wanted to share my thoughts, some of the considerations, some of the people that I've been listening to, and some of the videos. I want to make a presentation eventually to express and share these ideas and add some of my drawings and more imagery. It's going to take some time, so right now I just want to make this free-form audio to give a rough outline of where my gnosis has been taking me along this thread that I've been following for some time. I've been building in my mind a sort of model of the potential state and mechanisms of reality, its potentials, and where my place might be within that, and what a goal of mine could be once understanding this information. Okay, so a torus shape and the ether, imagining the void, the grand expanse of what they might call dark matter. Robert Temple is someone to look into who wrote the recent book on plasma, and before in the 70s, this great book about Sirius, the star system. So in this new book, talking about charged sentient plasma that makes up the invisible quote unquote space between matter or space, or actually everything matter when you break it down, turns out to be this charged crystalline sort of plasma material that's resting pre-materialization in that dark void. A lot of metaphysical teachers and theories touch on that magnetic feminine principle in that fabric of the infinite potential. That large, I say large, I just mean like ever-present fabric of chargedness. And I've been considering it as almost the larger mind, or the mind at large. And I'm reminded of the Hermetic principle, the first universal law: the universe is mind, all is mental. Within that larger field, or mind at large, also exist inherent archetypes, or aspects, or aeons. And we experience that as well in a smaller fractalized manner through our individual psyches, the parts within ourselves, and the connectivity we have with other minds and the morphic field. As Rupert Sheldrake describes, I highly recommend looking into his research. We can pick up data or information and have these connections through the fabric, the web, no matter how seemingly far apart from one another, within the field of consciousness where things emanate from as a foundation. Bernardo Kastrup is a person that talks about emanations from the fundamental field of consciousness. So I've been thinking about how if we can realize that there's this ongoing fractality, this unfolding from macro to micro, we can start to recognize the patterns, the way things unfold in cycles, applying the universal principles to electromagnetic flow patterns. And then this is where we go to Ken Wheeler, his YouTube channel. He's got years of videos explaining how convergence and divergence simultaneously, creating the closed loop system as a byproduct from electricity and magnetism, the combination thereof, creating this torus field, wherein the central point of that torus field becomes something called the plane of inertia, where the light slows down so much so that it seems to be materialized. I think of it as the singularity, the monad, or the central still point. For smaller systems within the larger system, like us, our heart has that toroidal field, the spark, the beginning. And this is a tangent and abstract, and I'm going all over the place. Like I said, I don't have it clearly outlined. I'm just going off of the top of my head because I want to release this video and I want to share my voice. And I think it's important that we share our voices. So I'm noticing how things happen within my mind, and then I apply that to the larger mind to gain insights into how things might be unfolding. So back to the vastness of the void, the feminine principle, the charged fabric of the ether. This is where Nikola Tesla talks about light. And the formation of light is nothing but a perturbation within the ether, a vibration, a frequency. And so the mind at large has its inherent archetypes, as minds do, or aeons, you could call them, all the different aspects of the mind. Several, or maybe all of them, once they begin to focus on an intention or want to actualize more than just being their own signature, they begin to spin like a thought. The thought begins to spin around. And when we focus on a thought and add intention behind it, the masculine principle of action enters. It brings the thought to life. That spark that I was just talking about in relation to the heart of inspiration brings the thought into material form. So all of these archetypes are aeons in the fabric of the infinite potential of the ether, the charged crystalline plasma swimming in magnetism. When there's a focus or a determination or an intention to become separate, to create, to discover, to do the next thing after just knowing what it is. I am that I am, and now I want to create. And that spark and that intention becomes a point of light. The vibration, the intensity, the laser focus of that thought or intention turning into a spark of light, the light then begins to gain charge, begins to spin, begins to loop onto itself. And as that looping continues, it creates the torus field. And that becomes a self-sustained, enclosed, looping system with its own specific frequency and multiple overlays of frequency. As it gains charge and collects data or more information, it begins to unfold upon itself within itself. As the realm or the interior of that intention builds more electromagnetic charge, it creates within the center where the light and time and space slows down to that singularity point within the larger torus field system, it begins to create the realm, unfolding within upon itself. And within that realm, like the Mandelbrot set, the fractals, everything created within that particular toroidal structure is begotten from the initial intention frequency that created it. It holds the patterning, the makeup, the design of the original. Like in that CIA document about the gateway experience, the absolute, they talk about everything being a fractalized hologram of that. So all time, space, frequency overlays, all spinning around, cycling like the shape of an apple, up through the central spiraling vortex, out the top through what could be called the black hole, then up and around, folding back into the system again. And that same toroidal dynamic is reflected in how life unfolds here, how nature unfolds. The spiral of the Fibonacci sequence, the golden ratio, all of it is mapped out through the vortex, spinning up and around. That's why we see flower petals, the spiraling of water, the swirl at the top of our head, the way plants grow, reach upward and back around, everything folding back in on itself. The realm feeds back on itself. Everything inside is mirroring that original coding. From the first impulse of wanting to be separate, of wanting to create, of perhaps not integrating the whole, of breaking off to be an independent self. And in doing that, it became an unbalanced, entropic system coded, like I said, from that base intention. Like Russian nesting dolls, the smallest part of the micro mirrors the macro. The spiraling of the DNA, the cells that resemble torus fields, our hearts with their electromagnetic torus field. When in the ether, the void of infinite potential and all this charged sentient plasma, that's the all or source. And from that, lesser creations spin off and become their own closed loop systems. But there are individuated sparks capable of receiving consciousness. These sparks get pulled in, magnetically drawn into, say, the black hole or the top or bottom vortex of a system like this, like Saturn's hexagonal spinning vortex. This realm has a similar structure, and it pulls in that charged sentient material from the fabric of the ether. When a female or any biological system here becomes ready to conceive or make a seed, it becomes an electromagnetic portal and pulls in, allowing access for one of the sparks to, or filaments, or however you want to say a spark, to move, or packet of sentient charged plasma to move from the void into the material realm, from spirit into form. And in that moment of fertilization, the spark between sperm and egg, that's plasma working through the physiological technology of DNA, animated by spirit. And that's why I feel we remain connected somehow to something outside of the physical, because of that spark in the central of the heart's magnetic field, that ember that fans the flame of the heart's electromagnetic field. And when the flame goes out for each physical person, the energy doesn't disappear. It moves back to non-physical form, but is still a charged crystalline particle, just without material substance, and not in that central point where the light is slowed down enough for us to perceive matter. And it still holds information, that crystalline memory of that lifetime, and it's still embodied in that individual spark, and then it moves on depending on the frequency that it holds. A spark may come in with a certain frequency and through life refine or degrade it. That change determines where it's pulled to magnetically next. So I've been thinking the central still point within ourselves is where we can best operate from. This is where we funnel our ideas, our intentions. It's the place that's not swayed by distraction or manipulation. And then this practice while we're alive is to remain in that center, to learn how to respond rather than react, to act responsibly instead of getting swept away in the outer currents that then loop back upon themselves, like the torus. There's so many overlays of frequency within this system, the sun, the moon, the planets, the luminaries. You can call them, I feel like they are the archons. They create locks on the realm through their set frequencies and alignments and aspects to each other, circling around the central vortex like a mechanical clock. I recommend the work of Nicole Murphy, The Law of the Luminaries. She's done several interviews recently explaining her gnosis, her collection of data on this. I really feel inspired by her work. So the luminaries, all with their own set frequencies in aspect to each other, depending on where they are in that central hyperbolic vortex of the torus. They push and pull us like magnetic filings of characters on a board, depending on the harmony or discord of that field's frequency. So depending on where each luminary is in relation to each other, there's pushing and pulling magnetic filings of the characters on the board, depending on the harmony or discord of the frequency and their aspects to one another. So when someone's given a natal chart, it's a map of their signature, the frequencies present at the time they entered into this realm, when the spirit became material. That becomes your song, so to say. And then you can learn about who you are through that, not to rebel, but to bring all parts into harmony. And not to exclude, but to integrate, to become whole with the elements available to you. And by doing that, by staying centered, by meditating on that still point as much as you can during your days, it helps orient you to not need to return here. This is what I think I mean by exiting the matrix, not coming back into this looping system, not getting caught up in this looping system. You find and remain at your center, and from there, direct your spark, protect the integrity of your essence. You are still a fractal of the whole within this designed realm. You have the opportunity to create with intention and steer your spark toward a more harmonious system, or into the void, or wherever you're called. And you have more control by practicing that while you're here, by not getting caught up in distractions, by becoming the observer, noticing the conversations under conversations, thinking deeper about what's being projected and why. Maybe something in you is calling for a new note to enter your song, to bring more balance. We are connected to a larger mind, and that doesn't mean victim to a larger mind, but this is what we're working with, the fabric of consciousness. We can access that morphic field. We can create and see it mirrored back to us. And I hesitate to say this sometimes, and this is where it gets into a little spiritual woo-woo, not like it hasn't been already, but for me, this is another territory that I am myself grappling with, because, hey, I don't want to be paralyzed. I don't want to be bedridden most of the time with a rare condition and severe chronic pain. So if we are creating our reality, why is this happening? I think it's because we're not creating reality alone. We are all co-creating. Everyone's subconscious. Everyone has split psyche, and that's all involved. And it's like all time and space simultaneously. And it's unfolding, and it's regressing and folding back in on itself and developing, and it's this constant morphing. Everyone is learning how to find that inner observer. And it's a long process. Seeking and finding and remembering that this gnosis is even a possibility. So no, I know I'm not creating this world by myself. We are doing it together. And maybe we are only as strong as the weakest link. Or maybe it's about what's in the field. Like Rupert Sheldrake's, well, it's not his theory, the 100th monkey theory, but it fits in line with his research, where enough repetition by a few creates a tipping point shift in the whole. That theory about the monkeys on this one island that started to wash their fruit in a specific manner that they hadn't done before, and when enough of them started to do it, to pick up this routine, then it sort of clicked in the field that connected all of that species together with each other. So on different islands, even though they hadn't had any access to each other, they started doing the same activity. Also, when someone breaks a speed record, like runs a certain number minutes mile or however it is, and then suddenly others can do it too. So once it's in the field, it is accessible. And so we're creating this place together, and then there's shadow, and there's parasitic overlays, and there's gunk, like Harold describes in his pre-birth memory, this black, bubbling, oozing, gooey that he looked down and saw upon, which was this realm, and how chaotic, and it was just all the horror of all reality, like bubbling up in his vision, with these little sparks inside as well. So we all have a part in this. And there's many subtle realms to consider. Egregore is formed through thought forms. And people, and even those energy thought forms that have dark intentions, it's all a part of the soup. So I think it's imperative to learn about the ingredients. Think about frequency. Find your center space. It's like a doorway within your central still point that allows you to slip through without getting caught up in the outer tornado spin in the eye of the storm. And realize that our brain and our body, our physiology is built to give us only one version of reality, but we're learning how to access others. I think that one thing about technology is what we're offered back to us as being futuristic and this amazing technology that they're selling us is a byproduct of what we already have inherent within ourselves. We are the quantum computers. We are the liquid crystal display. These principles and ideas, if you can apply them to our physiology, the technology that we inherently come with, you can dispel that it's supernatural and that it's just very, very natural. And this may sound fantastical. I wanted to get my thoughts out. I've been fascinated by the torus. I think that learning about electromagnetism and the flow and the cycles of feeding back onto itself and looping and fractality, and to consider contemplating all of these things as you're going through navigating this life, this reality, can give us something more to rely on as a possibility if you don't want to remain in this closed loop entropic system. Practice while you're here before you die how to stay in that central still point of equanimity and not be affected and not be grabbed upon, your attention, your focus taken away, takes you away, takes the energy away from that central furnace of yourself. So you can keep that ember, the integrity of it, and store that in the memory as well, in the crystalline memory of that transcendent triumph that you've been working on, and it's just going to get stronger. So thank you for listening. Yeah, I'm just going to put this video up, and hopefully you say hi in the comments and let me know your thoughts. And I look forward to putting this into a presentation for everyone very soon. So thank you and take care.